Meghan is willing to show pictures of her kids. I think it just depends on how many zeros are at the end of the check.
Again, I have to be careful what I say, but I won't be able to show, my children my homeland.
It is such a pleasure to be here in my new home of the UK.
You have been lied about for a series of years. How hurtful that is.
They say behind every fairy tale facade lies a story far less glamorous, and this one shakes the very illusion Meghan Markle and Prince Harry spent years crafting. Hidden behind the glossy smiles, the curated interviews, and those carefully staged family portraits, there was another world, quiet, strange, and shrouded in control. It all began inside the high-walled estate in Montecito, where sunlight never truly touched the truth. A woman once employed as both a housemaid and nanny has now dared to step forward. Her trembling voice carries the weight of secrets she never thought she'd tell. What she saw, what she didn't see, and what she still can't explain, it's enough to make even the most loyal royal follower question everything they believed about Meghan's picture-perfect family. She says Meghan viewed her own children not as innocent souls, but as assets. Commercial assets, she murmured, her voice breaking a phrase that sounds cruel enough to sting even years later.
She hasn't had the children herself, or Harry hadn't been involved, then they can't be in the royal line. They have to have royal blood, those little ones. Without that, there's no chance of them coming in a member of.
According to the woman, life inside that mansion was nothing like the dreamy home shown on Netflix. Every person who entered those gates faced a kind of scrutiny that felt more like an interrogation. Before anyone could fold a sheet or pour a bottle of milk, they went through background checks, camera-watch trial shifts, and signed suffocating confidentiality agreements. Phones confiscated at the door. Not a single text, photo, or whisper could escape. She recalls those mornings vividly arriving before dawn, her breath misting in the California chill, only to have her phone locked away like a criminal's contraband. It wasn't paranoia, she says it was control. Everything about Meghan's home screamed control. Even hiring a nanny wasn't just about caring for a child, it was about managing an image. The perfect nanny, Meghan reportedly believed, was not necessarily the most skilled, but the one who blended in invisible, unremarkable, forgettable, no attention, no risk, no competition for the spotlight. But then came the part that still haunts her. What she didn't see.
Meghan just wants to be an Instagram influencer. That has always been her level, always been her drive. Once everything else has been dried up, the kids are next. The kids were always on the docket to be part of the image selling and everything.
She says that through all those long days and longer nights, she never once saw Meghan visibly pregnant. Nor did she ever see Archie or little Lilibet inside that house. Not once. She's careful, almost gentle, as she says it. I'm not accusing, she explains. I'm just telling you what I saw and what I didn't. She arrived early enough to watch the sunrise from the kitchen window, and she left after the evening lights flickered across the manicured lawns. Yet never, ever, did she see a toy on the floor, a high chair, a sippy cup, or even the sweet chaos that children bring to a home. Nothing. She remembers how cold that realization felt. She thought maybe the kids were visiting relatives, maybe the family was traveling, but as weeks turned into months, the silence became heavier. When she later watched Meghan's documentary, seeing smiling babies, laughter, real family moments, her stomach twisted. The house she worked in wasn't like that. The home she remembered was too quiet, too rehearsed, too empty. It wasn't a home, she says. It was a stage. Every cushion, every photo frame, every flower arrangement seemed to exist for the camera's eye, not for life itself. Even the air inside felt rehearsed, as though it had been told how to behave.
In this case, about whether you think the birth was real, whether you think there was a surrogate, whether you think Meghan was wearing a moon bump, the fact is, Harry and Meghan lied. Buckingham Palace lied on their behalf. There was a complete cover-up over the birth of Prince Archie.
She recalls Meghan sweeping into rooms like a director, walking onto her set, everyone stiffening, their voices softening, the rhythm of the house shifting instantly. Meghan didn't shout, she didn't demand, she simply existed in a way that forced everyone else to shrink. Harry, meanwhile, floated on the edges, polite but distant, like a man who belonged and didn't belong all at once. The woman remembers working those long hours cleaning, arranging, waiting, and realizing that she had never once washed a child's bowl or picked up a stray sock. The playroom remained spotless. The nursery linens untouched. It wasn't the calm of a happy family, it was the silence of absence. She had worked in homes filled with children before, laughter echoing through hallways, little footsteps tapping across floors, but in Montecito, nothing. The silence became so complete it started to feel like its own haunting presence, and when she finally gathered the courage to whisper to another staff member, "Have you seen them, the children?" the woman just looked away and changed the subject. That's when she understood. Silence wasn't just a coincidence in that house. It was policy. Nobody dared to question anything. There were no memos, no rules posted on walls, just the unspoken law. Never speak of what you see, and never mention what you don't. So she stayed quiet, but the silence started to consume her. Every time the world saw a smiling Meghan holding a baby on magazine covers or walking hand in hand through the garden, she thought back to those empty rooms. The same garden appeared in the Netflix documentary, the same patio, the same sunlight, but what she saw through the lens wasn't what existed behind those gates. She said even the chicken coop, the one that became symbolic of normal family life during the Oprah interview, was, in truth, a carefully prepared prop. Yes, the coop was there, she confirms, and yes, Meghan did visit it, but never with the children. Not once. It was always with staff, sometimes alone. She described it as camera-ready, a place designed to photograph a fantasy of simplicity, not to live it. Watching those same scenes later with Archie and Lilibet suddenly appearing made her feel dizzy. It was like watching actors reenact a story that wasn't real, she whispered. And perhaps that's why the most disturbing part of her story isn't what she witnessed, but what she never did. The total absence of Archie and Lilibet. No cries, no giggles, no toys out of place. No bedtime stories, just an immaculate stillness that clung to the walls like a secret. When asked if she thought maybe the kids were being raised elsewhere, she sighed. Maybe they were in another house, another wing. But why the secrecy? Why the silence? She can't answer that, and maybe that's the most unsettling truth of all. She says that after leaving, those unanswered questions followed her everywhere. The quiet, the order, the almost unnatural perfection of that home, it never left her mind. Prince Harry, she recalls, was polite but distant. Some mornings, he'd walk past with barely a word, a man weighed down by something invisible. On other days, he'd smile briefly, as if trying to prove to himself that everything was fine. But Meghan ruled without ever raising her voice. Her presence alone changed the air. Staff learned to read the mood by listening to the silence. If the house felt quieter than usual, if footsteps softened and eyes dropped, it meant Meghan was nearby. No one had to say a word. Everyone just knew. There was no laughter, no spontaneous joy. Just this careful, eerie rhythm like the whole place existed to protect a performance. She never dared to ask about the children directly. In homes like that, she said, curiosity could cost you your job. So she followed orders, kept her head down, and went home each night with a mind full of whispers she couldn't share. But when she finally left and saw the world praising Meghan for her realness and authentic motherhood, something inside her cracked. She began to wonder, had she been part of a lie? She doesn't claim to know everything. She doesn't point fingers or make wild accusations. She only tells her truth that during all her time there, she never once saw a single trace of those children. Not a bottle, not a cry, not a sound. The absence became its own presence, a haunting one. She remembers cleaning the same spotless playroom day after day, sheets that were never wrinkled, and beds that seemed untouched. She began to realize that silence can be louder than any scream. To her, that house wasn't a home. It was a museum of perfection, preserved for the public eye. Every curtain drawn, every cushion fluffed, every photograph placed exactly where it would look best on camera. And when she walked out for the last time, she says she didn't feel relief, she felt grief. Because behind all that beauty, she had seen something deeply lonely. It's been months since she left, but the quiet still echoes in her mind. The disconnect between what the world sees and what she saw firsthand, it's too heavy to ignore. She admits that maybe the children were somewhere else, maybe hidden from the chaos of cameras. But why then pretend otherwise? Why create a fiction of perfect family life? She says she'll never truly know, and maybe she isn't meant to. But one thing she does know is that she will never forget that silence. The silence of untouched toys, of rooms that looked lived in but weren't. The silence of a woman who controlled every detail of her image, even when no one was watching. That silence, she says, tells its own story, one the world still hasn't heard in full. She said, sometimes she wonders if that silence wasn't just about privacy, it was about control, image, and illusion. Even now, when she tries to recall laughter or cries echoing through that mansion, she can't. The memory refuses to come because it never existed. She remembers Harry drifting through the house like a ghost, sometimes tense, sometimes hollow-eyed, as if he were a man living two lives. He'd nod politely, avoid eye contact, and disappear into rooms that seemed to swallow sound. Meghan, on the other hand, was the sun around which everything orbited. Staff adjusted their steps, their tone, their very breathing around her. She didn't have to say a word to command a room. Her presence demanded obedience. The house mirrored her mood. If she smiled, people dared to breathe a little easier. If she was quiet, the whole estate seemed to hold its breath. It wasn't fear. The nanny insists it was survival. That's how the staff learned to move, in the rhythm of Meghan's silence. She still remembers how even the air felt thick when Meghan walked by, how the world outside saw a calm, nurturing mother, while inside, the energy was tightly wound, every moment controlled, every surface spotless. There were no random hugs, no baby cries interrupting conversation, just a mechanical perfection. When people ask her why she didn't speak sooner, she says softly, because who would believe me? The world worshipped Meghan and Harry, the golden couple who escaped the palace for freedom. But freedom, she whispers, doesn't look like that. It doesn't look like confiscated phones, scripted smiles, and children no one sees. The longer she stayed, the more she realized that quiet wasn't peace, it was performance. Every photo released to the media, every perfectly framed shot of the family outdoors, now feels to her like a scene rehearsed to death. She knows what those gardens look like in the real world, the angles, the light, and she's certain those warm family moments didn't unfold naturally. They were manufactured. When she finally left, she carried with her not anger, not resentment, but a strange, aching sadness. It wasn't a bad place, she admits. It was just empty. A house full of beauty, but starved of warmth. A family built for cameras, not for each other. She says she doesn't want fame, doesn't want attention. She just wants people to understand that sometimes what we see isn't real. That sometimes the silence in a house says more than any interview ever could. And that's the haunting truth. She can't shake that behind the gates of Montecito, behind the laughter shown to millions, there was only stillness. A silence so complete it felt alive. A silence that held secrets no one dares to name. As she finishes her account, she takes a breath that trembles just slightly. I'm not here to accuse anyone, she says. I just know what I saw and what I didn't. And in that gap, in that unsettling stillness, lies the story that will never truly let her go.